Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of AWS Show and Tell. This is 2026. Happy New Year to everyone. Today we are joining with Pete to discuss about all the reinvent updates. We've just come back from, reinvent of 2025. There are a lot of announcements that we have, and Pete is here to talk, and share a lot of information about those. But before we get into all the details, let's do some quick intros. Pete.
Yeah, hey, I'm Pete Ildefonso. I've been a solutions architect at Amazon for about 6 years now. And, every year, one of my big passions is trying to pull together all of the reinvent announcements. As a solutions architect, part of my job is to make sure customers are educated about what they're working on and what's new and what options they have available to them. And it's really important to understand, all the hundreds of announcements that are made at reInvent. So I've been working with a team since I started here to pull together every announcement and really try and crystallize it down into one slide and one quick talking point that help customers understand. And I think today our goal is we're going to talk about those individual slides, but really try to go beyond that and say, why is this important and who will this be important for? So looking forward to diving into that now.
Hey, thanks, Pete. Yeah, I'm Anil Nadiminti. I'm a senior solutions architect here at AWS. I've been doing the AWS Show and Tell series for a year now, right? So we have a number of episodes that we've gone into details. But today's episode is going to focus on the reinvent announcements from 2025, and we already have some fans here. Pete, for you,
Hey.
so let us know in the chat where you're joining from. And again, if there is a topic that is of interest for you, or you're exploring certain areas within the AWS product family, please let us know, and we can probably zoom into that. Again, Pete has been doing this internally for quite a number of years, and we do have a number of announcements that are really packed into this episode for us. We may not get to all the announcements, right, because there are so many of them, and we definitely want to get through the most important ones for us. But with that said, let's get started.
Awesome. Yeah. So one of the biggest announcements all year this year has been Agent Core. Our Amazon, AWS Bedrock Agent Core supports agents. Just as a quick summary here, agents really, they're coded software. They leverage a lot of frameworks for most of their capabilities. And they function as these kind of autonomous systems, pieces of software that can reason, plan, and take actions to complete things on your behalf. And these are really distinct from these like one shot, you provide a prompt, it provides a response LLM capabilities that you traditionally associate with Gen AI. Agents, as a very big differential from those kind of tools, they can use things like tools. So they can access external data, they can iterate on the work, so they can make multiple iterations and evaluate it for what it wants to succeed with. And it can execute multi-step workloads where it's doing multiple things at once instead of that one shot. And so for Agent Core this year, one of the big, there's a lot of components within Agent Core. And you want to take things from these like laptop concepts, these prototypes, and you want to take them to production. And it turns out it's a lot harder to do that with agents than it is with a traditional piece of software, because agents need other tools that your traditional software stack doesn't have. And so across here, you'll see all 10 of these. We try to get them in one slide for everybody to see, but there's a lot of just basic things you want to do. You want to write the code. You want to deploy the code. You want to control the things it remembers. You want to give access to websites for activities. So like all of these across here, we've been slowly releasing these throughout the year. One of the biggest things that I will tell you that is most important to think about with Agent Core that I learned at reinvent NL is that a lot of people have been thinking about Agent Core as like where you go to create agents. And it's actually kind of a misconception of how Agent Core really functions. Agents are things that you write on your own. You can write them using strands. You can write them in your IDE and in Kiro, something like that. But you host these and use the tools of for these on Agent Core. And so in runtime, for example, you can host it like you would on Lambda. And memory is like a control on Lambda, and things like gateway could be like API gateway. These are not one-to-ones, but I'm just trying to give you like a conceptual model of this isn't like, oh, can I write my entire agent in? Well, no, this is a hosting platform with a bunch of capabilities that help you scale your hosting to an enterprise scale.
Exactly right. So again, when you build your agents and the whole ecosystem, you want to bring in all the capabilities, right? So your MCP servers, your ability to be able to summarize your sessions and then store the memory, conversational history, and a whole lot of integrations with your native ecosystem, right? So maybe the service is running within AWS or it's running externally, but you want to be able to link all of those, but also have observability into your how the agent is working. Right? So Agent Core provides all of those functionalities, but again, we have updates from
Yeah.
the on Agent Core
Yeah, I
functionality.
think two of the biggest announcements that were like new at reInvent. So like if you think of most of the things on here, you if you're and you've been in this world, you know these look pretty familiar. And there were some updates to strands that we'll talk about here maybe later. And like browser and code interpreter have kind of always been there, but two really big ones that got announced. So like agents are fun and it's fun to build them and all. But like when you give away a car for $1, which is something that happened not on AWS,
Yeah,
but there's like a big story about that. I don't know if you saw that with the truck.
yeah,
Like, when you give away a car for $1, now you have problems. So we realized we needed to create rules that businesses would feel confident about that could lock down their agents to say what they could and could not do. And so when AI starts touching production systems and facing customers, you have to be confident that those policies are going to be followed.
hmm
And so agent core policy is an option to control these items. It intercepts every single call that your agent makes through the agent core gateway, and it evaluates all of those calls against the policies that you've created in policy. Now you can take phrases like only offer discounts up to $100, and you can turn that into policy code so that every time that agent is running, it evaluates against the rule, am I giving a discount greater than $100? And it makes sure to not do that. And in addition, one of the things that we saw at reinvent a lot was this, like, I need to know what the AI is doing. I need to have it be traceable. I need to have it be reliable. All of the decisions that are made on either allowing the AI to the agent to continue or blocking the agent, all of those are logged and all of those are able to be audited later. And so I don't know, Anil, do you have any customers that are using this for things like policy creation?
I was at the reInvent booth supporting Agent Core, and we had a number of folks coming to the booth asking us about the new features, about policy, about evaluations, and how this will improve how the agents are performing their actions, right? So they have more confidence using agents with policies now that the policies are evaluating every request and being able to confidently say that the agents are going to be able to do those actions.
Yeah, I mean, just knowing that the agent isn't going to run off and do something because it's being checked each time is a lot of confidence building for executives. It's something you can very effectively demonstrate. Again, you don't have to use, if you're using Agent Core, let's say runtime, you don't have to use Agent Core policy. It's something that you can use. Maybe there's an open source tool you want to use. Maybe you're using something else for your hosting, but you want to use Agent Core policy and Agent Core gateway for this capability. So again, that mix and match capability is still there, but this does give you that pretty strong like confidence. Okay, my agent's not going to be running off doing whatever.
Right. Yeah. And here in this episode, we are going and covering the new features and launch announcements, right? So from the reInvent, but I've also in the chat included a link to the deep dive series that we have, which covers all of those different service offerings from Agent Core product family. So folks out there, you can go in there, look at the, bookmark the link, and then look at that later on.
Yeah, these other 9, and we're going to talk about one more here. So these other 8 are already existent. So there's already content that you can see on that. But one of the new ones that's also available now is something called Agent Core Evaluations. And so a lot of customers have said, I don't just want to know how many times my agent was used. I don't like observability is great because it tells you, it's used this many times and it was accessed from this app, whatever. That's helpful. But they really were saying, I want to understand the quality. I want to be able to do like sampling against the responses. I want to evaluate that. And so Agent Core Evaluations gives you that ability to do real-time monitoring of the performance of your agents. You can do things like compare it against a series of existent, what do we call them? Evaluation criteria. So we've got
Mhm.
13 built-in evaluation criteria right out of the box that you can say, check it against these things, for correctness, for completeness. But also you can do things like create your own reward functions that will identify whether the responses are correct or not. And it will give you the thumbs down, thumbs up things. It'll give you that kind of reporting. And so you can choose the amount of filtering you want to do or amount of sampling you want to do against it. But you can actually get quality analysis from your agent's operations. And you can do these things before you launch to go to prod. So like maybe you're in your testing environment and you just want to test this. Or you can use it for continuous production monitoring so that you can get feedback on how your agent's running.
One
And
of
so
my
I
favorites in there is actually the tool calling, right? So is to actually have the agent tool calling be evaluated to see and find out if the tools are being called correctly as expected, right? So you would assume that agents are going to be calling a particular tool, but maybe there is something going on, and you want to have more stats around that, right? So those
yeah,
are that's my
it's a good
favorite.
call out because, like we said, you don't have to use all these components, but if you choose to integrate agent core evaluations into Gateway, what it does is it can see every time a tool is called, and it can evaluate to tell you whether that tool is the correct use case for that, or if it had to reevaluate and call a different tool. So, like again, integrating these things does give you even more capabilities on top of that. Particularly if you're using runtime and gateway and evaluations and policy all together, it's a great way for all of those capabilities to really enhance each other that you don't have to build. That's one thing I want to stress people. We say you can do it on your own, but what that means is your engineering team has to build it on their own. Some engineering teams are into that, but like if you don't want to spend the money on that, you could probably just use this and try that for the first draft at least.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's Agent Core. I guess Anil, anything else that you heard about Agent Core while you're at reInvent?
Any fans of using Agent Code right now? Let us know in the chat. And again, Agent Code is going to help smoothen out your agent deployment into production with integrations with identity providers, with code interpreters, with being able to summarize your chat conversations, right? So there's a lot going on there, but I guess more to explore in the deep dive series that's linked up in the chat.
Awesome. So one of the big next announcements that I wanted to make sure we covered was Bedrock. Bedrock has and this is just an inference endpoint Bedrock, like
Mhm.
the old school Bedrock, if you
Yeah.
will, prior to all of the new announcements. We've actually introduced a new tier. We call it the priority inference tier. And there used to be a behavior where you just called Bedrock, and that's now called standard tier. But in your Bedrock call, you can include in the API a flag that says to call the priority tier. And when you do, what you're going to get is a priority processing that has a 25% higher output tokens per second compared to the standard tier. Now, I've been doing some modeling and I've been doing some comparisons here. Depending on the region, depending on the model, it's about a 50% increase in cost to use the priority tier. But for some customers, like I have a customer right now, they came to us and they said, I need to know that this is going to be processed. It's going to be processed fast, regardless of what's going on with availability in the region, because it's a production critical workload. And so for them, the priority does make sense. Not for all of their workloads, but for that workload. One
Right.
other note, if you used to use batch for this, we now just call that flex. So you've probably, it's not going to be much of a change, but that's an asynchronous system. So for the synchronous, for the immediate response, you can use standard or priority, and then you still have that flex tier available.
And with batch, you can always, again, as it sounds, right? Not the flex now. You can schedule your requests to be executed, right? So, I mean, do you want to throw some light on that, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, like I have some customers that what they're actually trying to do is summarize documents that are coming in, and then they want to summarize the commentary, and then they want to put that all into a report, and they're fine with doing that at night. And so
Mhm.
they're batching all of that. They're not caring about it. But now that's like the obvious use case, right? Like the new ones, when you start to think about it, is what if I have an agent that's trying to write code for me and is trying to run like performance tests and is trying to
Right.
evaluate, and like that could be running for like a couple hours.
Yeah.
So having it use flex and batch it actually makes sense for a lot of agent use cases too.
Right. Right. And the priority is where, the business critical workloads really need that
Yeah.
response from. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Excellent.
All right, cool.
Nice.
So one of the other big things I've been talking a lot about this on like social media and stuff that I think is really cool. Amazon has decided to spend quite a lot of money to develop agents that we think are going to be able to be used by all of the teams within Amazon. We think they're going to be relevant to everybody who builds at Amazon. And then we took all of that investment and time and learning and testing, and we actually started making them available to customers. So one of those agents that we built is this agent called the DevOps agent. It's a frontier agent that gives you operational excellence within your DevOps processes. What does that actually mean, right? So the DevOps agent creates a knowledge graph. If you're used to knowledge graphs or like Neptune or something like Neo4j, it literally is building that knowledge graph, and it connects your AWS accounts, your observability tools, and your operational systems so that it can understand all of your infrastructure relationships. Then what it does is it takes CloudWatch data, CloudTrail data, information from your third-party observability tools. It can integrate with service incident management tools like ServiceNow and your GitHub so that it can correlate code deployment events and other events within your environment to that infrastructure mapping. Once all of that is set up, it's able to then provide you root cause identification for errors. It's able to give you recommended remediation, and you can even set it up for automatic remediation against those particular actions. And so again, this is something that we developed and we spent a lot of our money and time on, and we wanted to make it so that it was available to customers to start using.
So the DevOps agent is like an autonomous on-call engineer. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah. Like imagine somebody's just like always in your account watching it being like, hey, this thing went wrong. I don't know if you saw this. Like that would be usually helpful. I mean, I guess. I think we've all seen that not be helpful sometimes when the engineer's annoying,
Yeah.
but not that I've ever been that guy. But yeah, I mean, imagine like there's just somebody here like, hey, what's going on? And it's like, yeah, this is what's going on.
Hmm.
That's literally what this is built to be. It's like a communication to say, we're seeing an issue. How do you recommend we resolve it? And we're talking about within minutes here. This is not, you got to feed in all the data and a couple hours later it comes back. This is within minutes because of the way that the agent is running.
Yeah, the beauty is that it has all access to all the data, the CloudWatch logs, and it can correlate and then find what's going on. This used to take quite some time for us to be able to troubleshoot. Back in the day, if you were to do this manually, right? So, but being able to have an agent that can, be our assistant to be able to support all of this troubleshooting is great.
And when I recommend you should turn this on, try it
Yeah.
out. Next time you have an incident, I'm not saying let this like automatically remediate for you right off the bat and trust it 100% right away. Give it a try. See what it's coming up with. See what it's recommending. Maybe evaluate that afterwards so that it doesn't have to affect you in that moment. But start learning what it's seeing and what it's recommending as remediation and then evaluating it, because it may save your teams a lot of time and effort. As someone who used to be on call, I highly recommend everybody try this.
Yeah, and at Amazon, right? So we at AWS we try to, eliminate that undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? So being able to copy paste the logs and being able to do that. So this is one of those, tools that will help you, get to improve your productivity as well.
Yeah, hopefully a lot less on-call engineers having to work as hard.
Yeah, excellent.
All right, so another one of our big agentic services that we invested in was to facilitate custom. We call AWS Transform Custom. We used to have a ridiculous name for this. I think it was like Gumby or something like that, like the little green guy.
Support, yeah.
Yeah. Because the idea was we wanted it to be very flexible. Like that was the whole point behind AWS Transform Custom. We didn't just want to be able to say we can upgrade you from Java 1 to Java 2 or Java 2 to Java 3. We wanted it to be able to say, take this library and evaluate it and determine how to upgrade it. So an example of some of the things that we were using internally, using this internally for, is we wanted to change a series of our code over from Python to Node. There was another use case where we wanted to change it from x86 architecture over to AMD Graviton architecture. And there's another one where what we wanted to do was completely redo the front end from Angular to React. And so these teams wanted a piece of an agent that was able to go in and not just look, anyone who's used one of these tools, immediately right off the bat, one of the problems is it looks at the core code, but all the libraries that are there might not be written in Java, even though it's modernizing Java. So you actually have a lot more work to do versus an agent that can go through each of those libraries, each of those dependencies, each of those integrations, and it can upgrade all of those because it's able to say, oh, this needs to upgrade from Java this to Java that. This needs to update from node this, node that. And it's able to do that as a monolith and really answer, let me modernize this whole thing for you.
Right. So
Yeah.
yeah. So one of the questions that keep coming is like, when you use when you have these tools that use AI to modernize, uh, is customer data being used to train the models, right? So that's a common question that we get. So maybe why don't we talk about that, Pete?
So a lot of customers have that concern. Is
Yeah.
my data being used? So here's one of the most important things to learn about all of these agents. Customer data was not used to train these agents. It was Amazon data. So like we started building these internally for us because of how useful they were going to be. If you don't know this, we have tens of thousands of developers. We have hundreds of thousands of AWS accounts opening I won't say every day, but I think I heard every year we open 100,000 AWS accounts just internally because we're doing so much testing. We're doing so much lifecycle work. And because of that, we needed a tool that was able to go in and say, let me fix this library for you. Because we don't want to focus on like library upgrades or language translations or something. We want to stay focused on the actual thing we're building. And so this is just one of those places where we used our data instead of customer data to train these. So don't have to worry about that.
Excellent. Yeah. So again, AWS Transform is going to help eliminate the tech debt by modernizing all the legacy systems, Windows, mainframe, VMware workloads. So this particular update, right? This particular, can you summarize this update again, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not only going to facilitate those Windows upgrades, the mainframe upgrades, the VMware updates, but it's also at its core going to do code updates. So think of Lambda runtime end-of-life upgrades, version upgrades for Java, Python, and Node, runtime and API migrations, framework migrations, language translations, and even architecture decompositions. Big set of capabilities here that customers should be excited to use.
Excellent. Cool.
Let's jump over to our next. So this is another big agent that we rolled out. So again, another frontier agent that we think is really important. Through extensive internal work, we decided to make this available. I heard this was like under the wire kind of a release because we really wanted to get it out to customers. This is going to proactively secure your applications throughout the development lifecycle. Excuse me. What it will do is it will design security reviews for you and make recommendations. It will check organizational security requirements that you define against all of your system components and all of your code. And then the big thing here is that it's going to do penetration testing for you. So what this is going to do is you can feed it a series of tests and attack plans that you want it to undertake. You can do things like give it requirements, design documents, source docs. But what it will do is automatically adjust to those dynamically during the attack and during the penetration testing. So if it discovers a new endpoint that is insecure, if it gets an error code that it thinks it can use to give more data to it to help with the penetration testing and try to manipulate, it will continue to do that. It will even attempt to use usernames and credentials. So there's a lot of things that it's trying to do to be a penetration test that's actually like adjusting on the fly to be like a smart penetration testing. I think it's one of the coolest uses of agents that I've seen so far.
Excellent, right? I mean, when you're building your prototypes and bringing them to production, you're focusing on the business case, business value that you're bringing in, but the security is also most important. Yeah. And this is an agent that you want to turn on and be able to bring in all of those security features into the application.
And an agent you don't want to build yourself. Like, let's be honest. Like, I want someone to build this for me and have it be great and then just be able to move on. That's why, again, these, as you mentioned earlier, that undifferentiated heavy lifting, this is just one of those great wins that customers can take and try and use and implement into their solutions.
Exactly. Yeah. And this particular episode of Show and Tell is a little bit different. Normally, we also have a lot of these demos, but this episode is a reinvent recap. We're going to go into each of these slides, the features, the product features, and we're going to go do deep dives in this series.
Hopefully, you guys will see some hands-on with the security agent and see
exactly right. I want to see this in action to see how this is going to secure my application. Right. So,
yeah. Now, another one that I'll just touch on quickly. So I've been helping a lot of customers with EMR this year, and the Spark upgrade process, it's come a long ways. but it can still be kind of burdensome to do all the planning and testing. And so we internally have this problem, and so we built this Spark upgrade agent for EMR. And so you can access this through an MCP client like Kiro, and you just tell it run the upgrade Spark app. And what it's going to do is it's going to iterate through a project plan. It's going to give you a compile and build recommendation. It's going to tell you, here's things we recommend changing from the API, from the actual code in Scala. And then it will actually do the tests, run the upgrade, check against those, do data quality checks. And once it's running, it will continuously do upgrades and checks. So you get that end-to-end agent. You don't have to have a person that's totally focused on this because the agent's doing that for you.
Excellent, right? So upgrades are always smooth.
Yeah.
When you know that it's all been taken care end to end.
Yeah, I mean, Spark upgrades are not something your team should be focusing that much time on.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that saves a lot of people a lot of time.
Excellent.
All right, Kiro Autonomous Agent. So this is the one that really I was shocked Amazon opened this up so quickly to people. So we have spent a lot of time and money developing this internally for our developers. So the first agents that we were developing, they take a lot of data, they take a lot of training, and we use the tens of thousands of developers at Amazon using Kiro, using our coding system, and we wanted to provide them with like a virtual teammate. And so this Kiro Autonomous Agent, what it can do is it can take tasks and commands. It can look in your code repository and take commands from there, and then it will just go and try and complete that task on your behalf. It can use the spec-driven development process that you've given it, and it can use things like specialized use cases from specialized context. We call those powers in Kiro. And it will run and it will do that all outside. Like, you don't have to be sitting there monitoring it, giving it feedback. It's going to go and run and through that, and then it's going to provide you, this is the recommendation and all the code and all the tests and the validation. And you can ship a lot faster because you're having this running in the background for tasks that are just not as important as the things you're working on actively.
Yeah. So for folks who are new to Kiro is like an IDE that helps you build your applications. And you can there is a whole lot of powers that Kiro has. Like I think, do we want to talk about that now, or maybe?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about Kiro Power. So like one of the things that we mentioned at reInvent was something called Kiro Powers. So like imagine you keep giving all of the your code assistant software all of the context it needs to help you build the applications for your specific environment. So like you're in the accounting department and you're trying to give it all the accounting context, but your organization is giving context for everything in your organization. What customers came and told us was that it was getting out of control. Like there was just so much data, there was so much context going in that it was just becoming, it was overwhelming the context window. And so a Kiro Power takes the concept that each of these should be in their own little silo, like the accounting information and information about that Stripe needs to run and Datadog needs to run. And you should be able to have all those be siloed and only provide that context to Kiro, your coding assistant, when it's relevant to your code questions and your code work. And so we call these powers. You can either use the out-of-the-box powers that are provided from a lot of our partners, or you can even build your own. So like if you want to limit context and things people can use in their development process based on the organization that they're in versus based on the level, you can actually do that. You can limit all of that context to those people and then only give those people those powers. You can also just make it so that the use of the wake words, so something like payment processing automatically invokes Stripe. So there's a lot of different ways to use Kiro powers, but it's like on-demand context for Kiro.
Is it to reduce the context, or is it to send exactly what it needs?
I would think of it as reducing context. So instead of I'm going to provide you all 15 sets of context, even though one or two of them is relevant, it's saying, oh, I see the thing that I'm working on here. I'm going to just pull those two things of context and provide them. And
so this is going to make it more cost efficient. It's going to make it better because the agent has most relevant context that it needs, or the LLM has most relevant context.
Yeah, and layering these powers, being able to work it so that the powers are relevant to the individual user, I think that's going to be really important for us once we start getting into like everyone's going to have the answer of, oh, just give it more context.
Hmm.
And like, yes, that is true. It will help, but if you just overload that context window, it's not going to help anybody.
Yeah.
They call it context rot, apparently, by the way, where you just like overwhelm the amount of context and it doesn't actually end up helping. Found that to be a fun term.
Yeah, it feels like maybe we should do like a context context engineering episode altogether to talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
this
How to
all of
optimize your
these.
context. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
All right, let's talk about the Nova 2 announcements. I know that this was another one that we've been talking about internally a lot. So let's go through these four real quick. So the first one is Nova 2 Lite. You can think of this as a very lightweight model. It's made for things like code interpreting and everyday asks, but it does have a 1 million context window. So a lot of people, they don't have access to models that have a 1 million context window, but they want to do things like provide like a handbook for their employees to ask questions against or things like that in the context. So we were just talking about the need for a larger context window in a lot of places. If you don't have a strict control over your context window, that's where these 1 million context windows really help. Nova 2 Pro is ideal for like a much larger agentic task, long range planning, sophisticated problem solving. This is where you can also use model distillation, that form of fine tuning, where you take data from this teacher model. The Nova 2 Pro would be the teacher, and then you're maybe training an open source model that you want to use for a specific task. And so that's Nova 2 Pro. Nova 2 Sonic is a real-time conversational AI that has built-in emotional intelligence and speech-to-speech capabilities. So this is a very focused model on speech. You can provide it text and get text back, but it's really focused on that audio and understanding context, understanding emotions, understanding it in relation to the rest of the context of the conversation, and having that conversation with you. It can support up to 7 languages now, and if you're using it in Connect, it can do up to 30 languages.
so which means that you can build your speech capable AI applications using this model.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the things you would have thought, oh well, what it's doing is it's taking the text, it's turning it, or taking my audio, it's turning it into text, and it's running it through the text. This is a native audio model that's really designed for audio, and so there's a lot more of those capabilities. If you've done testing in the past, I highly recommend testing it with this. And then the last one, which I think by far and away the coolest thing we announced at reinvent this year, I might be a nerd for that, but
Yeah.
sue me, is Nova 2 Omni. This is the entire industry's first all-in-one model combining multimodal reasoning, image generation, and speech understanding. And what it would traditionally take is multiple models. So it used to be if you passed it an image, it could do, and a model could do images. If you passed it things like video, it could do video. If you
Hmm.
passed it things like text, it could do text. But you couldn't do all of those together. The greatest example that I have of this is reinvent. Imagine all of the reinvent talks, all of the press releases, all of the code snippets that come out of reinvent. Now imagine trying to get an AI or a Gen AI app to create a slide like this. Anyone who's tried to create an image that has the correct text on it using a standard AI LLM knows how hard that is, much less this important of contextually relevant text. So what Nova 2 Omni is able to do is actually evaluate all of those together and then produce text, code, and images as an output all together. And so for the first time ever, I think we're actually going to be able to use things like slide generation and being able to create images that are rich in text, which I'm very excited for.
Yeah. Earlier, you have to do this all of those separately
Right.
with separate contexts and separate inputs, but now it's all together, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
what?
mean, being able to create a slide like this is a task that is a higher level learning task. So we need a higher level learning model. That's why they invented Nova 2 Omni.
Yeah, and this particular slide has a number of things that again we did not also touch on, right? For example, the audio, the docs, the video, the image. Like we have all these inputs that can go to these models, and the Nova 2 family has that 1 million context window that can process all of this, right? So there's a lot to unpack here in from this slide, but again, like we're going to go do deep dives on each of those
Yeah,
features and
I might even
yeah.
try to build something that uses this Nova 2 Omni. It's to show how the slide generation might actually work. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll come back and show you guys that.
Yeah, we'll bring you back, to to show more of that.
Now, another big announcement that's very relevant to this conversation we're having is the Bedrock knowledge bases multimodal retrieval.
Hmm.
In the past, Bedrock used to be able to store data like text and images. But when you wanted to search data across your other formats, it was a lot more difficult, particularly on what it was able to generate back to you. Now, because we have these multimodal embeddings and multimodal retrievals, what you can do is you can put text, images, audio, and video all into Bedrock knowledge bases and have it generate out the relevant text, image, audio, and video segments for the final response. And so again, this is taking those core capabilities that we're launching in these LLMs and then also providing them in the ways that you need them, particularly in knowledge bases, instead of having to use a third-party app to do all of this.
So in simple words, right, are we saying that we can, dump all the documents, pictures, videos, everything in one place and let the knowledge base, uh, serve responses? Is that what it
Yeah.
is?
So like imagine you search for I need I want to know, the example we had was like, okay, so imagine our CEO is up on stage and he's talking about Bedrock knowledge bases, the new multimodal retrieval announcement. And I wanted to be able to go into the video, pull the relevant video sections. I wanted to go into the audio, pull the relevant audio, the PowerPoints, pull all of that and give me the contextually relevant data to give me the responses for things instead of trying to pull all of reinvent's data into that context window. So that's where this knowledge base is able to do that multimodal pull and really enrich your responses instead of having to do such a larger context window.
That's excellent.
Yeah, I love this announcement. It's just one of those little fun ones.
Yeah.
What do you? Let's talk about some of the infrastructure. I know that you and I were talking about this earlier. That customers have been really interested in that. Just a quick hit on these. So if you are building your own foundation models, frontier models, one of the big announcements was that we announced the TRN3, which is powered by the Trainium 3 chips. This can give you up to 362 petaflops. Up to 1 million chips can be generated together if you want. So we've had some customer use cases where they're doing that. And we've even had people building up to 1 trillion parameter model using these all networked together. And that's one of the big announcements. You can also find the EC2 P6 B300 instances that run the NVIDIA B300 GPUs and the more enterprise, the larger version of that, which is the P6E GB300, which uses the NVIDIA GB300 NL72. So both of these and the use of Ultra Server are really for people that are doing those much larger frontier models, and they want to have AWS capabilities that can do that for them. Now, I don't know about you know, I haven't had a lot of customers that are doing their own foundational models, their frontier models, because they're just okay with the ones we provide through Bedrock. But for anyone who is interested in these, I think they are going to be really relevant.
Same for me as well. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So one of the other announcements I think that customers were really excited to see was that we've actually made S3 vectors now generally available. So this is over 2 billion vectors that you can index. This is going to give you a response query latency of 100 milliseconds. So like, why do you care about this, right? Well, what most customers are doing is they're taking all of their data, they're vectorizing it using an embedding model, and then they're storing it in an active processing database.
Hmm.
And that is going to take up memory, it's going to take up CPU, it's going to be pretty expensive. And then it's just sitting there the vast majority of the time for a long period of time, not really being used. So if you're not actively using all of those embedded vectors consistently, you don't need to worry that much about the access speed and the things that you're accessing. Even though 100 milliseconds is great for things that you're not accessing that often. So what you can do is you can use the S3 vector store on Amazon. It's the only one of its kind. It is a native storage vector support, and it can reduce your cost 90% compared to those other solutions. And so I have been pushing my customers. I think you should start thinking about having a standardized enterprise vector store available so that when a team wants to start using data, they already have that vectorized data available to them and can start working with it immediately. Now, they might have to redo some of those vectors later if they decide they want to do different chunking strategies.
Hmm.
But in general, they should have that ready to go and start using it. S3 vectors gives you that cost-effective option to be able to do that.
And you touched on the most important point where the the engines are not running, right? You don't have to keep the cost getting accumulated all the time, and this is that's the one of the reasons why we have like low cost option for
Yeah.
uh, bringing your applications live. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love this announcement. It's showing our investment and really what people are looking for. And like this is one of those things that we just knew that the market was going to need, and that customers were going to find valuable. Another one that one of my customers found very valuable was this new announcement about SageMaker Unified Studio serverless notebook. So a lot of customers that have very hands-on engineers that are very involved, they're going to use their own IDEs. They're going to want to connect the SageMaker Unified Studio through their own IDEs on their local machines. But there's also a growing number of people that want to use the data in SageMaker Unified Studio that just want to have it be native in the SageMaker Unified Studio browser. And so this is a serverless option. You don't have to spin up instances and then run notebooks on those instances. You're just going to be able to log in directly into this. It scales everything behind the scenes, and you're still able to access all your SageMaker Unified Studio data. And you can do your SQL, you can do Python, you can do Spark, all in this one IDE, and instead of having to jump between multiple IDEs to do that.
This is great because when I always go to my notebooks, I have to go back and make sure that either the auto shutdown is present, or
Yeah. Yeah.
it's always accumulating cost, right? So you want to make sure that this is one of those features where the serverless is you pay as you go, you only pay when you use it. So definitely experiment and explore this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is very helpful. I think that this is the kind of capability that when customers are like, we want to turn on instances, but then sometimes the instances aren't available, or sometimes we're not sure which instance to use. We're going to take away all that guesswork. We're just going to give you this. In that same vein, I know one of the other things we announced this year that I've been excited to start using is this Bedrock reinforcement fine-tuning. If you've ever done fine-tuning, you know that one of the most annoying parts about fine-tuning is that you have to create all of the input prompt examples and then create the responses that you think would be ideal for those input prompts.
Right.
It's frustrating, to be honest. Like it maybe you've got a database somewhere already of like it's a support thing and like this is the standard input, this is the standard output. But most people are sitting there like typing up what they think the ideal answers are. And it's expensive to hire somebody to do that. It's expensive to do it yourself. And so what we did was, instead of calling it supervised fine-tuning, we now have reinforcement fine-tuning. And this is where you can identify a reward function that says these kinds of things are scoring well, these kinds of things are scoring poorly, and it will automatically score the responses based against that reward function and use that for the fine-tuning so that you don't have to create all of this labeled data. We've done internal testing, and reinforcement fine-tuning improves your model accuracy by 66% on average based on base models.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I also want to see this in a demo and see how it's going to improve the responses as well.
Yeah. So I think we have a couple more minutes here. I want to keep talking about one of the other like little announcements is that OpenSearch now has this built-in agentic search where you can have users ask questions like find red cars under $30,000. Mm-hmm. And the agent will actually interpret the intent, orchestrate the tools, generate queries, and then give you results along with a detailed explanation of why that series of results was provided, so that you can do searches against OpenSearch without having to actually have them be coders or know exactly how to use the coding language against OpenSearch. So this kind of capability, there's actually a couple places this shows up. There's one in SageMaker Studio, there's one in Connect, but this is something you should start to expect to see more of, is this like enriched data capability where you're able to search and understand what that underlying data is, but you didn't have to label all of that data extensively. That's a really important thing because a lot of people don't want to spend the time doing that.
Yeah, this is a cool feature, to be able to get that information. Excellent.
Yeah. So how much time do we have left here? I know we
have about 15 minutes, but we can keep going. Yeah.
We should talk about NovaForge then.
NovaForge. Okay. I was going to ask you, right? When is NovaForge coming into this?
Yeah, I mean, NovaForge. Okay, so for people that haven't done this before, a frontier model, it's a big investment. Like if your customer's ever like, okay, I want to build a frontier model, you're like, sweet, this is going to be a lot of money. I don't make any money because I'm a solutions architect and we don't work on comp, but the AM somewhere might. But the biggest problem with it is having the time, the materials, and the data.
Mm-hmm.
And so when customers came to us, they were like, I really do want to be able to create my own model. I want to be able to at least try to. Where do I get started if I'm going to do that? So what we've done is we've created these 4 kind of like checkpoints. There's the 0 checkpoint, which is an empty model. But there's also pre-training, there's mid-training, and post-training.
Mm-hmm.
And these are each points in which you can start using a model that's at that point of training and then start custom training that model with your own data. You can take your proprietary data and then you can add in Nova curated training data to create these custom models, depending on how much data you have and how much time you have to spend building up these models even further. You can do things like supervised fine-tuning. So we just talked about the fine-tuning. You have a bunch of data. It's all labeled. You can do that. You can do reinforcement learning. You can do model distillation. So if you already have a really big model somewhere and you want to have it train from maybe the mid-training using your proprietary data and that model. So these are ways that you're able to really start bringing a frontier model and making it available to you as a customer without having to start from scratch and using all of your own data.
So where do we start? Like with this, do we start with one of the base models that's available? How what can you throw some light on that?
Yeah, so when you first start, when you start with the empty model, Nova Forge gives you a series of options when it comes to that. But you don't start. It's not you shouldn't think of it as starting with like an open source model, because a lot of those open source models, they already have like 6 billion parameters included, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you're trying to do here is actually build your own set of parameters and build your own set of data. And so at the pre-training and the mid-training stage, there could be examples of things like those open source data, but you can start thinking of it as more of like you're creating your own vectors, you're creating your own data sets. This is really creating a foundation model, not just taking one and modifying it.
Right.
And yeah, I know there's a lot of questions about cost here. There is a subscription fee to use Nova Forge. If you're interested in Nova Forge, again, it's still a big investment. I would highly recommend talking to your AWS services team to get started with that. But there's a lot of customers that they just didn't realize that this is within their reach. We're not talking about millions of dollars here to build this. This is something that customers can start jumping in and really trying to use and get started and create. If you're thinking of yourself as a big company out there, we had a couple customers that talked at reinvent. One of them that was even a public customer was Goldman Sachs, who they were building their own internal model. If they had these as starting points, they probably would have been built a lot faster and a lot cheaper, because they didn't actually need to start from 0. They could have started from a mid-training point maybe, and then built that up from there.
Yeah, more to come on Nova Forge, right? A deep dive is definitely required here.
Yeah, this would be fun. We should build out a reinvent recap, maybe a version of Nova Forge. Now, I think that would get old very quickly.
Right.
Now, one of the other things we talked about was people who want to be able to take data and train and fine tune a model. And so when I've worked with customers that are trying to do this, what they have the problem with is they want to take all of that data. They want to take the open source model. They want to take all the data, and they want to try and start fine tuning. But it's a lot of like manual, like management of the data, feeding it in, evaluating the responses. So we created this SageMaker AI serverless model customization that allows you. It's just like an end-to-end component tool within SageMaker AI that allows you to feed in the data. It will coordinate the data preparation. It will do training data. It will do model evaluation, and it will give you that end-to-end. Even it will deploy it for you to SageMaker or Bedrock using serverless inference at scale. So like this is somewhere where instead of having to do all of this manual training for fine-tuning on your own, you can actually do this directly through SageMaker AI and save a lot of time and effort.
I see this more like a pipeline, where you have like everything orchestrated for you, and all you need to do is supply that base model and do those customizations, and the pipeline is going to take care of this end-to-end.
I mean, you've seen how fast these models come out.
Yeah,
like, you can get a new model next week from something, and then you're going to have to go back and do all of that all over again. No, I want a tool that's going to make this so that I can have, I can just put it into this pipeline. I can check it, and it's going to use this. The LLM as judge saves a ton of time when it comes to evaluating the response data, and then I can launch it. Like I don't want to have to manually manage any of that stuff.
And to touch like one thing you brought up earlier in the chat, Pete, is we build the tools ourselves to to be able to use it, and then we make those available to our customers, right? Because we see that is a very popular request that our customers have, right? So again, we've taken uh, all of these open source models that you see like on this slide here are available, and every time there is a new feature or some new next version of this model that's coming up, almost all of these have to go through this same pipeline, and we think that this is a common use case that customers would be using, right? So and then we make it available here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think anyone who's doing any kind of fine tuning, which fine tuning is incredibly successful. I know there's some haters out there of fine tuning. I have a customer that has a particular employee at one that I won't name. But if you are doing manual fine tuning, yes, it is not worth the effort. But with these kind of capabilities, with these kind of tools, it does really. I mean, you're seeing 66% improvements on the actual outputs. Like that's clearly worth it to do the fine tuning.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, one other one. So I think anyone here that has ever trained even a fine-tuned model knows that when you are doing training, you are working with very large, very expensive instances. You need these things to function at a high scale, high performance scale. And every once in a while, even when you're using the cutting edge technology like we provide, you're going to have failures in one of your nodes. That's just, as Werner Vogel says, everything fails all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have noticed, and we originally provided, was a checkpointing system. So that when a checkpoint was hit and there was a failure, you could go back to the most recent checkpoint, restore all of the context to all of those nodes, and then start your training again. But that was taking quite a long time. And so what we started doing was doing distributed context across all of the nodes. And so that way, when the actual model hit one of the nodes hits an issue, it's able to pull that model state from a healthy peer and avoid restarting the entire system from a checkpoint. And so we've been doing this internally. We've been using this for our own models. We're seeing a reduction in downtime by 80%. And that's real money. These are instances that are very expensive. When they're running, you want them to be running at their peak capacity. And so saving yourself 80% of downtime is a significant amount of money. And I love this capability because it's something that we made for our customers, and technically it's costing us money to provide this capability, but we knew it was something customers wanted.
Excellent.
Yeah. So another tool that I've been using with a lot of my customers is Amazon QuickSuite. Now, if we were to talk about QuickSuite and all of its capabilities, we would be here for days. I know we've talked about QuickSuite multiple times in this channel, right?
Yeah, and QuickSuite is one of my go-to services nowadays. As I work through my, as I start my day, that's one of the services that I almost hit everything in the morning. The first thing that I do.
Yeah, and peek behind the curtain for everybody that doesn't work at Amazon, we actually are extensively using QuickSuite internally. So like teams not only are creating repositories for that, but what they're also doing is things like, oh, check my email, check my Slack, tell me what's going on. What's the number one item for my day today? And it's able to pull in all of these different sources and really give context. And then I can do things like deep research. So I've been using this for deep research a lot now. So like what I'll ask it is like, I have a complex social problem on one of my teams. Here are the people, here are the things that they're doing, pull in all the context from all my documents, all of my emails, all of my Slack, and give me a series of recommendations about how to improve the interpersonal skills on my teams. That might sound like a ridiculous thing to ask a computer to generate for you. But let me tell you, I was shocked by the responses. I've been actively using them and having them be effective. So like there are a lot of ways that we're using these tools internally to be very successful. If you haven't used QuickSuite, I highly recommend starting it. A quick overview, you take data, you put it into a space. You can also integrate data from using our connectors from all of your existing data sources. If there's a connector for it, then you're able to create custom agents. So you can say, hey, I want for this agent in this chat, I want it to only pull in these data sources. Or for this chat, I want it to pull in these data sources and use web search capabilities, so public web research. And so you're able to create chat agents. You can do that deep research like I was talking about that's going to do long iterative processing. You can still use QuickSight. I know a lot of people move from QuickSight to QuickSuite and we're like, what is this?
Yeah.
QuickSight is still there. It's a BI tool that you can ask questions against and get answers about data,
Visualizations.
visualizations, charts, all those kind of things. And there's a lot of automation capabilities that we're launching into QuickSuite as well, where you can have data processing workflows, and you don't need to be a coder. None of this stuff requires code. You're connecting components and you're using natural language to talk to QuickSuite.
What I also love about QuickSuite is the capabilities where you can integrate with MCP servers, right? So you have your connectors with all the data sources. You can integrate your MCP servers. You have access to a whole new set of features with these capabilities alone, right? And then you have your deep research agent, your chat agents that are able to probably read your emails, be able to gather the relevant information from the chats that you have linked up, and all of that is going to be useful to provide all the response for your questions.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
this is
people ask me, okay, so how do I access my agents and Agent Core from QuickSuite? And I'm
yeah.
like, through MCP? Like, is that a problem? Yeah. Oh, wow, I can do that. That's right. Right, because when you're hosting on Agent Core, you have the gateway that provides an MCP endpoint, and then you can link in that agent directly to QuickSuite. So now we've got customers that are building out on Agent Core that are able to actually create new agents and custom agents, and then also hook those directly into their QuickSuite and ask questions up against it. And so, like, there's a lot of capability integration here too. That's very exciting.
So quick question there, Pete, is can I now use QuickSuite to integrate with my database and ask questions about, without having all of these new front ends? Uh, you know, can I just integrate QuickSuite with the database and ask questions? Hey, you know, what's the status of this particular, whatever it is, right? So
I always say be as realistic with the
yeah.
responses as possible. So think of it this way. If you have not turned that database into something that's embedded, so
Mhm.
something that's like an actual embedding that the model can understand, the LLM can understand, what it's doing is it's actually pulling that in and using it as context. So if you have a database somewhere that's just relational data with columns and there's no context, there's no understanding what's in that data, you can imagine that the AI might struggle a little bit providing that as the
To
context.
understand the schema and to be able to
Right.
relate that, right, right.
Right. So that's not going to be as effective. It's going to work with it, and it's going to try hard, depending on what kind of model you're using on the back end. It will sometimes catch it, but it's really the databases that you have embedding models already in there for that's going
Hmm.
to make it the most effective. And then
Excellent.
all of your non-relational, all of your you have JSON objects, you have images. Those kind of documents are a lot easier for the AI to understand.
Excellent. Yeah, we are getting to the end of the stream here. So just with a couple of with a minute left, right? So I know we have more slides, but we got to uh, wrap up the show on time here today.
Cool.
But I want to take your as we close this out, right? Do we have like any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah,
As we
so I think one of the most important things that we leave reinvent realizing is that we have to be sure that the tools that we're using are the right tools and confidently provide them to our teams. So like things like Kiro and things like Agent Core, teams need to understand that all of the capabilities that we're building out are not only there, but we're building on top of those. And they're able to give you auditability, they're able to give you traceability and reliability so that you can confidently provide those to your team. And so people that are in these states of like, I don't know if I'm ready to suggest this to my team, you need to just start learning a little bit more about these tools because that's inherent in a lot of the things that we've built out. And it didn't immediately come out from just the keynotes, but when you're in these conversations with customers and with service teams, you start to realize how important that specific process of like the user picking this tool feels confident that it's the right tool. That is so fundamental to how we built these specific services so that customers could confidently say, yep, that's the right tool. I'm going to move forward with that. So get to that state. If you're not there yet, there's a lot of reinvent content out there. And then stay tuned to this channel as we start showing you how to use those actual capabilities.
Yeah, excellent. And again, thanks a lot for the recap here today, Pete. I'm sure we'll see you again on this channel, doing demonstrations and deep dives with some of the new announcements that we have discussed today. With that
Excellent.
said,
Thanks for having me.
thanks a lot for tuning in to for this episode, and we'll see you again next week with more details on coming up. Excellent.
Thanks all.